What is it like becoming an author in your 50s? Well, quite a dramatic sea change, I think, for anybody. And I've got a guest today, Elizabeth Green. She knows all about becoming an author for the very first time in her 50s. In actual fact, 53. So good morning, Elizabeth. What an exciting changing career. Tell us about it.
Yeah, good morning, David. Good morning, everyone. Yes, it's been a lifelong ambition of mine, really, to be an author. There's a bit of a backstory to my book, because I actually wrote the original version when I was 14.
You didn't?
I did. So, and I've actually got it. I've got it here.
That's the original writing when you were 14.
The original, well, so what happened was, when I was younger, reading was my thing and writing was my thing. I was bullied quite badly at school. And I talk about this when I go into schools with my book, because escaping to a world where there are no bullies, the world of books, I could literally just hide away in my bedroom and read and write. And it was just sort of my form of escape and safety. So my parents knew that I loved reading and writing. And one Christmas, they bought me a typewriter. I was 14, and I literally hid myself away, and this was the result: The Adventures of Detective Dopeyworth. But
hang on a minute. Detective Dopeyworth.
Dopeyworth. Yes. Well, the premise is that he is extremely clumsy. I'm extremely clumsy as well. And I mean, I know you're an author yourself, and sometimes the ideas for books, I actually don't know where they come from. So it just literally came into my head. But I do then think subconsciously, this detective is part of me. He wants to succeed. He wants to do well. Loads of obstacles get put in his way. He's really clumsy. He's always falling over. Everything's a disaster, but he keeps on going. So this story literally just tumbled out of my head onto the typewriter. And it's quite funny, actually, when I go into schools, because the book's aimed at sort of 6 to 8 year olds. When I go into schools, they very often don't know what a typewriter is, which makes me feel really old. And they often ask me if there was electricity when I was young. So I have to say I'm not that old. But yeah, so the story sort of tumbled out, the original story. But then I was 14 and I sort of forgot about it. I tucked it away, but took this away into a drawer. And it was only really a few years ago, when my parents died, that we went to the house and we were clearing the house out, and I found it tucked away in my dad's desk. And my dad had a writing bureau, and it was tucked away with all those things, because he had absolutely loved this story. He'd loved it. And I think the biggest thing about the whole journey is that I wish my dad had been here today to see the book being published. But yeah, so that's where it came. So I sat down. I actually sat down on the floor with this, and read it and thought, this isn't going to sound very modest, but I thought, oh, it's quite good. This is quite a nice, sweet story, and I really quite like it. And I'd love to publish it in my dad's memory, because he really championed me, as a writer. But like, sort of life got in the way, and my writing career never really took off. So I then started the process of turning it into a book. So it is still the same story, but obviously I wrote it as a 14-year-old. Now, I don't know if you're like this, David, but every writer thinks that their first book is absolutely wonderful. The first draft doesn't need any editing, and everybody's going to snap it up, and the next day you're going to be a multimillionaire like J.K. Rowling. That doesn't happen. No. So I sent it off to an editor, and we had 6 months of editing it and shaping it into a story, from a 14-year-old really to, I was 52, 53 at the time when I wrote it. And the final result after 6 months of editing was the book, which is here, I'll try and get the glare off it.
There you go. I can see it. That looks very exciting. I have seen it on Facebook, and I'll put links in the video as well to your website and Facebook, so people can go and learn more about the book. But can I just backtrack a little bit? So when you rediscovered the manuscript in your dad's papers, were you looking for it? Was it something that you just put in the back of your mind? And was it like almost a fresh discovery to you?
Well, sort of yes and no. I wasn't looking for it, but my dad, interestingly enough, and I think, you know, obviously we've spoken before. My dad was an antiques collector, and I was just making sure that everything was in order, that we'd not missed anything. I was looking for some, you know, some of his antiques were left, and I was looking for the paperwork for the antiques, and but I knew that I'd written it. I'd remembered that I'd written it, and over the years, I'd sort of thought, oh, you know, I wonder where that story is. You know, I'd love to see a copy of it. So sort of yes and no.
So over the years, did you ever talk to your dad about it? Because you say your dad was a great fan of the story. So in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you know, you didn't have that conversation with your dad. Have you still got it, Dad? What do you think? Should I
No.
publish it? Wow.
Do you know that the sad thing is, no, not really. Well, not that I can remember, because I had a big career as a sales director for a house builder, and I had a family, and it just consumed all of my time. And while in my spare time a little bit, I wrote poems and the odd short story for magazines and things like that, I never really thought about being a full-time author. So no, I didn't have that conversation, which seems a real shame now.
And do you think it was a confidence thing? Do you think that you gain a little more confidence as you get older? So in your 50s, suddenly you became, actually, I've achieved, because I've known you for years, in actual fact, through McCarthy Stone, where you were involved in the sales and marketing, and I was doing events for McCarthy Stone. So we've known each other for some time, and you had a very good job, and it was a very responsible job. And I suppose over the years of building that career, that must have built your confidence. So can I ask, would you have had the confidence in your 20s to go to a publisher with this manuscript? Or did you need to be in your 50s?
I think the timing was right. It's almost like it was meant to happen when it was meant to happen, because what I've found as an author now in my 50s is you do have to be quite resilient. And maybe I didn't have that resilience when I was younger. It is not a simple process being an author. And as you get older, you're more accepting of the knockbacks, and the edges have been knocked off you a little bit. Well, as you know.
Well, actually, let me pick you up on that. Let me pick you up. You say more accepting. I think it's more just, you're just used to it, aren't you? You kind of know, the older you get, the more things you try, careers, projects, and the more you get used to things just not working and being failures. And the thing is, I think the older you get, you realize that I've had many failures, that the failures are not a bad thing. They're actually just building blocks to a great success. And I always think that with every great success, you've probably got umpteen amounts of failures. But as a younger person, I couldn't accept that. I didn't want to be seen as a failure. So the older I get, the more things I try. And I'm guessing this is what happened with you.
Yeah, and I think as well, because of my career in sales and marketing, that has really helped me as well to be able to, promote the book. I didn't have that skill set when I was younger. I think I would have just sent it off, and if it had been rejected, that I probably would have just parked it and forgotten about it. I think now I'm a bit more, just come on, Elizabeth, keep on going.
Yeah.
You can do this. And, you know what it's like, as I said, being an author yourself. It's hard work. And I just... Whilst I had more of the physical energy when I was younger, I think the mental energy is something that's really important, and that you gain with age, definitely. Yeah. Now I think, right, come on, this is my time. It was meant to happen now. And whilst I would, like I've said, I would have loved for my dad to have been able to see the book, because he would have been so proud of it. He would have absolutely loved it. I think it was definitely the right time to publish. And I think to publish it in his memory is very, very special to me.
It absolutely right. And I think you're right. The timing was perfect. I think had it been 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been right. And I think things do come along at the right time. And, happenstance, coincidence, call it whatever you like, finding it in your dad's desk. I think that's really very important. And that was the signal for you. Now, let's go back to just how easy or difficult it is being an author at any age. I'm guessing then, Elizabeth, you're making a fortune.
Well, Yeah. Well, no. No is the short answer to that.
Talk us through the process. When you decided to publish it, you said you went to an editor. You would have had to have paid for that, for someone to
So
edit.
I paid for the editing. So I paid for the editing. I found an amazing editor called Eva Marie, who is Spanish actually, which probably sounds a bit bizarre hiring a Spanish editor. So that was the first part of the process, and I had to pay for the editing. And we agreed on a sum, but the editing process took so long. And again, I think just going back to the age thing, it was a difficult process, the editing for me, because Detective Dopplerworth was sort of like my baby, you know, and you have to be open to criticism. So I would write a piece, you know, I'd send it off to Eva and she'd say, right, you know, we need to change this, we need to take this bit out, we need to look at this as if a child is reading it, you're giving too much away, this is the wrong language, and on and on and on. And it was exhausting. And then I'd write a piece, you know, which I thought was very clever and very funny. I'd write like a scene, and I'd send it off to her, and she'd just come back and say, no, I don't like that. And it, you know, and I think the younger me might have given up. But, you know, and I did have to keep taking breaks from it because it was such hard work. And I think literally, without exaggeration, and of course, we're talking full stops, commas, capital letters, all the rest of it. I think we had 10,000 editorial changes.
Wow.
You know, and that's not an exaggeration. So that was a long process. And finally, when Eva said, I think we're there, I was so relieved.
Yeah.
That we'd actually taken, you know, we got the story into some sort of shape. And then the next part, of course, was the illustrations. And again, going back to what you said about, you know, making me lots of money, I had to pay for the illustrations. And then to find a good illustrator, I mean, there's so many illustrators out there, and you have to be very, very careful who you choose. And unfortunately, the guy that I found in America was a massive Sherlock Holmes fan. So it tied in nicely with the book. And we worked together, and that took months as well.
So this is months of work, lots of money that you're spending, and you're doing it whilst working for McCarthy Stone, the retirement home.
Well, I'd actually, I was working for McCarthy Stone, and then I had a job change in the middle of all that.
And
so
what did you go to? What did you go to, Liz?
Well, sorry, it wasn't a career change. I went to work for Kia Homes. So I left McCarthy and went to work for Kia. But so it didn't leave me a lot of time. And the illustrations were very important to me. And again, it's a bit, I suppose I didn't really know. Well, I sort of knew what he looked like in my head, but then conveying that to somebody in America, you know, yes, he's got red hair. It needs to be a bit curlier than that. Mike could send me pictures. No, that's not quite right. His face needs to be a bit thinner or a bit rounder. His eyes need to be a bit bluer. It was almost a bit like doing a crime fit. And it took months to get it right. And every detail had to be perfect. So, all of that is very expensive.
To be honest, Elizabeth, you sound like an illustrator's nightmare, sending back all of the time.
Well, but the other thing is it was a real learning process. So what I found now is there's lots of groups where I can help other authors by giving them, not that I'm a seasoned author, not at all. I only published my book last year, but, you know, I've learned so much in the last few months about becoming an author that I can try and help them. And, you know, again, with illustrators, you know, some illustrators charge maybe £200 an illustration, and some illustrators charge £1,000 an illustration. You know, you've just got to find the right one, and you've got to set your own budget. So yes, you know, that whole process. And then of course we go on to publishing and formatting, and that was all done for me by the publisher. But again, I had to
let me go back a little bit. So before you start pitching it to publishers, you put what, 12 months of time into it?
Yes.
Of cleaning it up and everything else. Never mind the 40 years in waiting to publish it. And what sort of spend, Liz, did you put into it? In
thousands.
Right. So roughly how many thousands?
Yes. And now on book 2, I think I could probably do it for less because I've learned a lot.
Right.
And I'm writing in a slightly different style now, so my editing costs I don't think will be as much because I've learned so much from the first edit. Interestingly, I was talking to another author who said that she published her first book and she spent £19,000 publishing it. Now, that is a lot. As you know how much us authors earn from Amazon, that's a lot of book sales to get that back.
Right, absolutely is. That's true.
Yeah, that's not what I spent, by the way, in case my husband's watching this.
But a few thousand anyway.
2,000, yes.
Okay. So let me talk to you about the publishing process, because anybody watching this who feels like they've got a book in them, and in truth, there's an old saying that there's a book in everyone, and I think absolutely, there is. Yeah. Because everybody has a story to tell, whether it be from their imagination like yours or a life story. So that there is potential for people to write their book. So let's give them some advice. So lots of time and effort and heartache and disappointments in people criticizing your work. So you've got to be ready for that. A few £1,000 here and there in illustrations to get it ready. Now you've got it ready. You think it's publishable. What did you do?
Okay, well, I actually decided to go down a hybrid route with it. So I have a publishing house that do the formatting and they do the printing. They get the all the necessary copyright information, all of that. So I paid for that. But then I do all the marketing. And there's lots of different ways that you can do it. The hardest way is to try and get a publisher yourself, to try and get a book deal. Yeah. And it's not generally the most profitable way, unless you're a famous, become a famous author. Or you can go the way I went, which is sort of in the middle, which is a bit of both. You've got a publisher on board, but then you do a lot of the work yourself. Or you can go down the self-publishing route, which can be a lot less expensive, but I'm not. You have more control over the costs and things. I decided, because I was new and green to the whole thing, that I wanted some expertise. I wanted this, and they accepted my manuscript, and they've been absolutely brilliant. So I published through a company called Grosvenor House, and they were absolutely fantastic.
Let me just go back on this hybrid route. So you've got the So what roughly would someone expect to cost them if they went the hybrid route?
On top of all the other costs, it depends on the length of your book, but you'd be looking at probably between about another £800 to £1,000 to go down the hybrid route.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot of hybrid publishers out there who will charge you a lot more than that. So all I would say is read the reviews, be aware. There's a couple of websites, and I'd probably just have to look up and let you know about them, that will give you reviews of all the publishing houses about how good they are. And I spent quite a lot of time researching them. And I have to say, the company that I use are very good. And they have, in terms of, if I had to pay them by the hour, I've definitely got my money's worth. What? Because I've literally been on the phone to them every day. They were so patient with me. They guided me through the whole process. I got copies of the book included in that price. They formatted it all. Copies were sent to the British Library. It was uploaded to all the retailers. They do all of that. Self-publishing, you have to do that yourself, and I just didn't know where to start. So
okay, so you went that route. When was it published? What year?
It was published on October the 7th, 2022.
That date is burnt into your mind, isn't it?
It is. And I went to, on the day it was published, I went to my dad's favourite place in the Lake District, on his favourite walk with my brothers and my sister, just so that we could, so I could feel like he was there with us, which was really nice.
Oh, that's wonderful. And where is it being sold now? How do you go about marketing it? And I've got to talk to you about money. I've got to talk to you about how much you would earn potentially on a sale. Let's go through it. Be as honest as you can be.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So it's available online at Waterstones, and it's also on Amazon. I think it's with another couple of retailers as well, or I have a website as well, so you can purchase it directly through me. One of the other ways that I sell it is by doing author visits. I go into schools and talk to them, tell them about my story as an author, do little reading and writing workshops with them, so that, so people buy it direct from me as well. I didn't know that you had to do any of that when I became an author. I just thought, I'm going to upload it to Amazon. Oh, sorry, the publisher will. And the next day they'll be ringing me saying, oh my gosh, your sales are off the chart. You know, here's a big royalty check. If that doesn't happen. Because what you've got to remember, David, is thousands of books, particularly children's books, are being published every week. So if you don't get yourself out there, you're going to really, really struggle. And for every book that I sell, so this is a hardback copy, these are available at $13.99, and then we do paperbacks at $7.99. And I think, so if I buy them myself from the printer and sell them at $13.99, I'd make about £6 or £7 on a hardback. Okay, depending on print costs, because there's a worldwide paper shortage at the moment, which means that print costs go up and down. But the more I order myself from the publishers, the cheaper they become. So they become cheaper in bulk. And so the most profit I make is if I sell them direct.
Okay.
If I sell them through Amazon, for example, this paperback, $7.99 through Amazon, I probably make a couple of pounds on that. Now, the interesting thing about Amazon is that they will buy a stock of them in. I don't know if you know this. I didn't know any of this when I became an author. So Amazon will buy a stock of them in. If they don't sell, they start reducing the price of them, and you have no control over that if it's done through a publishing house. But it doesn't affect your profit. So actually, sometimes Amazon can reduce the price, boost your sales. You still get the same amount of profit, but Amazon get less. But Amazon, I think they take about 40% profit on them. So whilst Amazon is a fantastic portal, and you sort of need to be on there as an author, it's not the way you make the most money.
So where do you make the most money then?
Probably selling them yourself, like say going into schools. I do local fairs, things like that. I think just going back, if you had a publishing deal and you had a big marketing team behind you, you would obviously sell more volume. So you would perhaps make more money that way, but that's not guaranteed. You have to really push it out yourself, and that can be quite challenging. The other thing that I found, which I think people would be interested to know, is I thought it's very difficult to get it into a bookshop. So I've approached several bookshops. Mine is in a bookshop in Stockton. It's on online retails, but physically getting into a bookshop, unless you have a traditional publishing deal, is very hard. And there's a reason for that, because there's a lot of self-published books out there that are not very good. So we tend to all get tarred with the same brush. And there's also a lot of self-published books out there that are very good. So, but you have to convince the retailer that yours is one of the good ones. And sometimes you have to leave them on sale or return, or just try and persuade them just to take a few copies and see if they sell. But there's a lot of books out there, David, that I've looked at, that there's spelling errors, there's formatting issues. They look really poor quality, and and unfortunately it impacts on the people who've invested a lot of time, money creating their own books themselves.
So it sounds to me then, Liz, that the whole process to you has been a bit of a shock to the system, because I think maybe you might have thought it was going to be a bit easy, put it on Amazon, sit up with your front of the fire with a glass of wine and watch the money roll in. Did you not?
It did. It's funny. So Julie, who looks after me at Grosvenor, I had this, sort of daydream that October the 8th, the day after it was published, that Julie would be straight on the phone at 8 in the morning saying, I can't believe what's happening. Detective Doku has gone viral. It's not, it doesn't. But that whole process has been incredible, and the people that I've met who've supported me, helped me, pointed me in the right direction. For example, my local library, I live in North Yorkshire, so Stokesley Library, as soon as they got wind of it, they contacted me. Come into the library, we'll help you do a launch. I've done a little competition with the library. I didn't know about getting it actually into libraries, and you have to fill in the paperwork. So if anybody borrows it for a library, you get royalties. Didn't know any of that. But there's so many people out there that will help you. There's a wonderful author who lives near me called Gabriella Gordon, who's written a detective book. She contacted me as well. Sorry, my son's in my eyes. She contacted me as well, and we met for a coffee, and she you know, she gave me some great tips. So I would say reach out to other authors. Do you mind if I shut my blinders?
No, you do that. Go on.
Yeah, you know, there is a lot of help. That's better.
Yeah, we can see you now, Liz. So,
yeah.
this is what you do now as a job. This is your new career.
This is my new career. I do work part-time doing something else, but this is what I'm really focused on, yes. And I've just literally written, I'm in the process of writing book number 2, which is Detective Doppyworth and the Mince Pie Mysteries.
I love some of that.
So that's a Christmas book. Now, there's another pitfall there because I tried to get the same illustrator for that book.
Yeah.
And I couldn't because it's a Christmas book. He couldn't do it for religious reasons.
Wow.
So
well, you'd never even consider that, would you?
No. There's so many things, you know, that might happen. And then I've written another book, which is a children's story, which is a picture book called The Owl Who Could Only Growl, which is about an owl called Clarence who's frustrated and finds it difficult to, you know, let go of his feelings, you know, display his feelings. So that will be out in a couple of months as well. So yeah, so I'm busy.
Wow. And any regrets finally, Liz? So you had a well-paid, good job. It might have been stressful, but you had regular money coming in and, you know, bit of prestige and suits and meeting people and selling properties and actually, you know, a good career, an interesting career. Now you must spend a lot of time on your own in your office, sending emails, trying to flog books to make £7 a go and going into schools and all of that and driving around. Are you making more money, less money, same money?
I'm definitely making less money, but in terms of personal satisfaction, it's been huge. The other day I was out walking the dog in the village and a little boy ran up to me who I didn't know. And, you know, I've only lived here since last year. And he said, "You're the author of Detective Doppyworth. I absolutely loved it. When's the next one coming out?" That to me is worth, you know, everything. And, you know, when I go into schools and people are so excited to talk to me and they'll tell me that they bought the book and how much they've enjoyed it, and they'll say to me, "Oh, I'm going to go home tonight and write a story." That, you know, don't get me wrong, it's great having a well-paid job, but personal satisfaction, I think when you're my age, is very important. Yes, we've all got to pay the bills, but the pride I have seeing my book in a bookshop online with 5-star reviews.
Brilliant.
I mean, I've had nothing but 5-star reviews so far, thankfully. Is, you know, it just means the world to me. It really does.
Let's have another look at it before we go. Let's have another look. There we are. I'll put links in below. Liz, well done you. I think you've been incredibly brave. You know, we only get one chance at life, and you could have procrastinated and thought and worried about it for years and but you're doing it. So you're living the dream as an author. And
yes, don't get, if there's any authors out there listening to this, just don't give up and reach out for help. You know, reach out to me. But you know, I'll give you some advice. The author community is absolutely wonderful, and everybody is wanting to help each other.
Fantastic. Liz, wonderful. Before we go, I must, as a fellow author, take this opportunity to ruthlessly plug my new book.
Yes. So tell me about your book, David.
Well, don't worry. This is all about you. People can find this online, Amazon, everything else. But this is yours. So if you text me your address, Liz, I'll sign it. It's a bash. So it's just humorous stories from the time of the empire. I'll send it to you.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you.
You've been a really wonderful guest, a great inspiration. And I hope that viewers watching this, wherever you are in the world, will take inspiration from Liz. And if you want to be an author in your 50s, get up and go out and be an author in your 50s. Elizabeth Green, well done you. Lovely to see you again. See you soon, I hope. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.